So Donald Trump recently attacked Kamala Harris for, get this, her treatment of Mike Pence. He says she treated her poorly, that she is, quote, nasty for the way that she treated him during the vice presidential debate of 2020. As if Donald Trump himself didn't treat Mike Pence poorly. As if he didn't just take advantage of him on the ticket in order to court evangelical voters to win the 2016 election, and then basically threw him under the bus on January 6th, had his own supporters chant to hang Mike Pence, and now he's not even running with Mike Pence. He's running with J.D. Vance. He wouldn't even pick him to be his VP again. So this type of trend, there's a trend going on here. This type of thing follows the trend of Trump's attacks and Republican attacks just falling flat. And falling flat not just because they're weak on their merits, but falling flat because they are hypocritical. So yes, Kamala Harris wasn't exactly nice to Mike Pence, so to speak, during the debate. She said, "Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking." That rubbed Trump and Mike Pence and the right the wrong way. They thought it was condescending. But Donald Trump has been much worse to his own vice president, a member of his own party. Trump's a guy who calls rhino Republicans human scum. He tweeted that in 2019. So the trend here is that Trump's attacks and the Republican attacks in general are just extremely hypocritical. They're throwing stones in glass houses. They attack Harris for supposedly being of low intelligence, being stupid. Like, okay, really? So even if I were to say, well, you know what? Fine, I'm going to vote for whichever candidate I think is smarter between the two of them. Like, really? Are you going to convince me that Donald Trump is smarter than Kamala Harris? That really he's the embodiment of intellect? Now, I get, if you want to make the case that neither of them are smart, fine. But if you're going to say Kamala Harris is unintelligent, Donald Trump is a beacon of intelligence, I got a bridge to sell you. I mean, you're just in a cult. I'm sorry. They attack her for being incompetent. Really? Donald Trump was peak competence? Some of the right's own criticisms of Trump actually show that maybe Trump's not all that competent. They'll attack him for appointing neocons to his administration, which is something that they agree with the progressive left on. John Bolton, Gina Haspel, Mike Pompeo, some other people who weren't loyal like Jeff Sessions. They criticize him for basically putting these generic establishment GOP figures in his administration. And then he ends up firing them. He ends up going separate ways, and they don't endorse him in 2024. So is Trump really competent? Or is he a guy who struggles to put loyal people who are going to worship him and stand by him in his administration? What is going on here? So the incompetence attack fails. The stupidity attack fails. Another attack recently is the attack on Kamala Harris and her policy, or lack thereof. They say, oh, Kamala Harris doesn't care about policy. Kamala Harris is running a campaign based on vibes. If you go to her website, there's not anything there about policy. Well, that may well be, but she's actually given plenty of policy recently. She's talked about her policies regarding economics, climate change, foreign policy at the DNC, policy regarding Israel and Gaza. Trump, of course, does talk about policy, but really, which candidate actually talks more about policy? And which candidate runs more based on vibes and I'm the cool outsider? It's Donald Trump. He talks about how there's a witch hunt against him. He talks about how the 2020 election was rigged. I mean, this is just a pure personality thing. And don't even get me started on their supporters and all those videos out there, all the montages out there you can get of people interviewing folks at Trump rallies where they basically just give their reasons for supporting him and they barely even give policy. They say they want to take on the deep state. They say he tells it like it is. Even if I grant you that he tells it like it is, that's still not policy. So what is going on here? Donald Trump does not have Kamala Harris beat in terms of discussing policy. That is for darn sure. And I would be willing to grant that Kamala Harris has been somewhat vague regarding policy. That's totally fair. But Donald Trump is not the policy wonk candidate. He wasn't in 2020. He wasn't in 2016. He never really has been. He's the vibes candidate. There's also the speaking issue. They make fun of Kamala Harris for her word salad answers to questions, kind of just spouting nonsense sometimes, being vague, wishy-washy, sounding like she's trying to hit a 1,000 page limit or 1,000 word limit for an essay. And I sort of get that. She kind of elongates some of her sentences, throws some excess words in there. But really, if we're going to talk about ability to handle the English language and ability to speak concisely, candidly, and articulately, Donald Trump is still not the winner here. Donald Trump rambles on about Hannibal Lecter, sharks, electrocution. He slurs his words more than Kamala Harris does. Let's be frank about that. He's a mess verbally. I mean, he might not be as bad as Joe Biden was, and hence he never had to step aside. But for crying out loud, this guy struggles with speaking too, and he's able to basically circumvent those criticisms and make that not seem like as much of an issue because of his sheer amount of confidence. And that, to his credit, is something that he understands very well, that confidence is important. They also talk about how Kamala Harris was not popular until 2024, until she became the nominee. That's sort of true. She did have a really low approval rating as a vice president. She was tied to Biden. People didn't like that. People didn't like Biden's age. People didn't like the economy. Donald Trump has never been popular. As president, his approval rating was never above 50%. He was lucky to get up to 49 or 48. Kamala Harris obviously is not popular. Now, Donald Trump, of course, did win his party's nomination. So there's a Republican criticism of Harris never won a single vote in the primary. That's true. That's true, but that's not really her fault. That's essentially Biden's fault for becoming the nominee, for staying in the race, and then realizing that he couldn't make it and dropping out voluntarily. And then Kamala Harris, like pretty much any vice president would, stepped up, took the nomination, got all the delegates, made the case, faced no real competition, and she's the nominee. Any other candidate who stepped up to take Biden's place wouldn't have to win any votes either. So this idea that, oh, she's just unpopular, nobody likes her, everybody likes Trump, Trump's the king of popularity, he's the people's guy, he has the mandate, Kamala Harris doesn't because she didn't get any votes. That argument is at least based in some truth as it relates to Kamala Harris, but it's still total nonsense. So yeah, the right-wing arguments, the Republican arguments against Kamala Harris have almost exclusively failed. In the few instances where they get something right, it's barely compelling. So yeah. Anyhow, that was just a thought I had recently. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching.